my friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Patty. I go by Pattymac Makes everywhere online. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these 3 variations on Christmas mug rugs. I had a beautiful set of charm packs that were sent to me a couple of years ago from Creative Notions, and I just have not used them, and I thought I'm going to get those out and use them for this particular pattern. So I'm not sure if you can find this fabric anymore, but any Christmassy charm pack is going to work for you, or you can cut your own 5-inch squares. But I thought instead of cutting, it would be really fun to just kind of jump into the project. So let me just give you this particular tip when you're putting these together. And you're going to want to have contrast between your blocks. So what you'll see here is these 2 blocks are the same and these 2 blocks are the same. And I wound up using the same background here. I'll leave that up to you. Whatever you like to do is perfectly fine. But the main thing is to just try to have a little bit of contrast between each of the blocks. So before I started filming, I paired a couple of things. And I paired this white and gold to the red and white. And for this block, I paired another white and gold to this red paisley. And so that gives me a really nice contrast between each print. So what we're going to do is to put our fabrics right sides together, and I always think it's easiest if you put the light color on top. Now, the way that I make my half square triangles generally is I overcut on that initial square because I like to trim back. But we're going to be a little bit limited in what we can do because we're using pre-cuts. But the mechanism is still the same. And so what I'm going to do is to draw a line on either side of this ruler. This is a new to me ruler. I just got this. It's from OmniGrid. And I really like it because I do a lot of blocks that utilize this initial construction. So all I have to do is to put the ruler down and draw on either side of it. And automatically, that's going to give me my 1/2 inch mark, which is 1/4 inch on either side off of the center. Okay, that's a mouthful. Basically, what I do when I make these blocks is I draw 1/4 inch off of center, and what I'm going to do is to sew on the lines, and then once they're sewn, I'm going to cut them apart in between. There's all kinds of different ways to accomplish the same goal. And so I show you the ways that I like, that work for me. It doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. It's just one possibility. And, you know, what you want to do is you want to try out all sorts of different methods and see what works for you. Okay, so I'm going to take these off camera. I'm going to sew on the lines. I'm going to cut them apart. I'm going to press them open, and I'll show you how we would then construct our block, or construct our mug rug, I should say. Okay, we're back, and I have 4 half square triangles. And you can see this is how they look untrimmed. And, you know, I really like my half square triangle blocks to be really nice and sharp. And so I'm going to trim them down, and usually I will overcut by a full inch and then trim back to the size that I want. And in this case, you know, I'm working with 5-inch squares, and so I'm not going to be able to get that nice clean 4.5-inch cut or square that I really want. You can sort of force it, but you're not going to have your center line following your seam, which is how you get your perfect points. If you need more information on making half square triangles, I have a video on that, but suffice it to say, this is just going to be just too small to get a 4.5-inch HST out of it. So we're going to have to go down to a 4-inch square. So what I'm going to do is to slide my square down the seam just slightly, and then I'm going to trim a little bit off. And you can see that I'm using my rotating mat because it's so fantastic for helping with this type of trimming. And what I'm going to do now is turn this and line it up on the 4-inch mark. And you have to be super careful. You want to get it all the way around. There's a line here and here, and you want to also make sure that your center line is following that center seam. And there we have it. And let me just show you the difference. So here is the untrimmed and the trimmed. And yeah, you do lose some fabric, but you also have a perfect square. And that's what you want to really have your best success in quilting. So let's just do another one. And you want to press down with, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to give you the instructions. Let's say we'll use dominant, non-dominant. So I'm going to use my non-dominant hand, and I'm pressing straight down, and then I'm going to make sure that I have a pinky on the mat. And expose the blade, cut, and cut. Okay? And then we're going to turn the mat, and we're going to have to reposition our ruler. And we're just lining up on the 4-inch. We have the center lined up. Again, non-dominant hand, pressing down, pinky on the mat, and cut. And voila, there you go. The fun begins. So you've got 2 of these, and you've got 2 of these. And honestly, you know, this is up to you how you want to design your mug rug. And so let me look at what I did on the first one. So I kind of did something like this, where I pointed 2 reds together. And then you could do something like that. I mean, this, honestly, this is whatever you want to do. This is however you like, however you want your final piece to appear. I like this because then you're alternating the light and darks, and so you get your best, you're going to get your best contrast between. So that really, to me, worked well on this one. You could also do something like that. And then that gives you a whole different shape. That's kind of the fun of this, is determining what kind of shape you want. That's cool too. So, okay, here's something I'll share with you. So mostly what I have here are non-directional prints, but this particular star print is very directional. And you will have your most pleasing result if you have your directional fabrics going the same way. And so here I have those the star design going the same way. And that just makes it a little more pleasing to the eye. So that's something you would want to look out for. But how do I want to go? I do like that. I think, though, I'm going to go like that. I really like that. So the way I would put this together is I would sew these two, and then these two, and then have the upper and lower halves, and then connect those two. So I'm going to go ahead and put that together, and I'll come back and I'll show you the finished little mini quilt top. All right, here's our beautiful finished little mini quilt top, and I really love this. It's sort of, I guess that would be what they call the broken dishes pattern. But you can see that this really gives you some good practice with lining up your seams. So it gives you, because you want everything to meet in the middle, and you have all of these points that you want to match. And that's why trimming down using this precision ruler is so helpful, because all of these things, to get your best result, you want them to match. Let me show you the back. So I press my seams open, and I like it because it helps them to lay flatter, and I also like to... Okay, sorry about that. The camera battery died and just all other kinds of technical issues. As I was saying, we're looking at the back of the work, and I press everything open, and it just makes for nice flat seams, and I can see all of the landmarks for retaining my points as I go ahead and sew around. So now it's time to quilt, and that is like entirely up to you. However you want to quilt, I'm going to leave that up to you. What I wound up doing on mine is stitch in the ditch, and so I just followed all of my seams, and I used a print that I had in my stash, and what I did was cut the fabric to the same size as here. I sewed all the way around. I left an opening to be able to turn with my hand, turn the work out, and the first step is to sew your edge stitch all the way around. And what this does is it's just a nice way to present a finished look to your piece, and also in the process of doing your edge stitch, you're going to close your opening. And that's where my opening was, where I turned. Now I will tell you, this is difficult to get the opening absolutely perfect, so don't flip over that. Use your iron, use your steam, and press this as crisply as possible, and just do your best. That's all I can say to you, is just do your best. And just go ahead and do that nice edge stitch all the way around. For my batting, a lot of times I will use the fusible, and in this particular one I used fusible, and then I wanted to try it with the other. I had leftover 80/20, and that's what I did for this one and this one, and it's loftier, and it gave me this much puffier look, and I have to say I really like it. So the type of batting that you choose is going to really impact what your project is going to look like. So if you want a fluffier, puffier look, then the 80/20, like the polyfill type of product, is going to give you the puffier, loftier look. If you go with the fusible, then it's going to be a little bit of a flatter appearance. So that is really a personal preference. I'll let you decide what you want to do. But anyway, I had leftovers from other quilt projects, and so that's what I wound up using here, and heck, I kind of like it. So that's how I made this one with the half square triangles. And you can see it's a bit smaller because by the time you turn your work and do all of that, because again, you have your seam allowance, your 1/4 inch, you lose that 1/2 inch. Isn't that interesting? So it looks so much bigger in the unfinished than I guess it is, but anyway, that's that one. For this particular mug rug, it utilizes the 1/4 square triangle, and I'm kind of into those right now because I used them to construct my envelope quilt that I'm still working on, but anyway, it's moving along. But the 1/4 square triangle is really a fun block, and I want to show you how to do that. And essentially, it's another 1/2 square triangle, but half of your 1/2 square triangle is in 2 parts, and that's where you get the 1/4 square of the triangle. So to get your best result with this, you want a dark fabric, you want a medium, and you want a light or a background fabric. So to make the first one, I came up with this. So there's my dark, there's my light or my background, and there's my medium print. And you can see it's the same as this. So the first thing I'm going to do is to make a 1/2 square triangle with the medium and the dark. So let me go make that. What I'm going to do is just like I did before, same procedure, same process. We make our 1/2 square triangle. Everything is exactly the same as we've always done. Okay. Let me take that over to the machine, and what I'll do is I'll sew on the lines. I'm going to cut it apart, and then we'll have 2 1/2 square triangles, and I will come back and meet you here and show you the next step. Alright, you can see that I have made 2 1/2 square triangles, and in the last project we went ahead and trimmed it down, but we're not going to do that this time. We're going to take this half and we're going to put it right sides together on top of the dark square. And what you want to do is you want to try to line up the corners the best you can, all right? And then, well, let's see, let's use our Omni Grid. We're going to draw our sewing lines on either side, and what I want you to notice is that the lines are being drawn perpendicular, okay? So that means perpendicular means at a 90-degree angle to the seam, all right? So the geometry really, it comes back. The geometry in quilting is very interesting. It's all geometric shapes and designs and principles of rotation. It's pretty cool. Okay. So I've drawn my sewing lines just like we did before, and I'm going to go ahead and fasten them. You don't have to do this, but I'm sort of clumsy, so it helps me if I keep everything secured together. So I'm going to go to the machine, and I'm going to sew on these lines. I always sew on the drawn lines. Those are my sewing lines. And then I'm going to come back and I'll show you a little something, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're back. It's hot off of the machine. You can see I haven't even removed my clips yet. We'll take those off. And I have sewn on that line just like I showed you. And when we pull this back, oh my gosh, look at that. Now, here's something I'm going to show you. You know, generally when we make half square triangles, what we do is we'll cut them apart, we'll set our seams, we'll press to the dark, blah, blah, blah. You know the routine. But when we get into quarter square triangles, there's so much bias involved and just in the way they're constructed and cut and yada yada. Something I learned from watching Karen Brown is that, and this is genius. So what you can do when you are doing this type of block, instead of setting the seam by first cutting, then setting, I'm going to press this unit just like it is, and that will set in my seam, and then I will press to the dark side. So stick around. What I'm going to do is just go to the ironing board, press it out gently. We don't want to stretch, but when you press it as the whole unit like this to set the seam, you're minimizing any risk of stretching. So hold on, let me do that real quick. I'll also tell you, when you get into these quarter square triangles, using spray starch is really your friend. So okay, I've set my seam, and now I'm going to use, I always use this particular ruler to trim my pieces apart, and I'm going to take it over to the machine, or excuse me, the ironing board. I'm going to put the dark on top, and I'm going to press to the dark side. Okay, and that's what we're going to have. I'll be right back. Okay, it's all nice and pressed, and look at how beautiful that unit is. Now here's the thing, it's going to be really wonky, and you're going to have a hard time even getting, I guess you could probably get a 4-inch, you could. So we can get a 4-inch cut. It's very close, but I think we can do it. Let's give it a try. Usually I will cut these down to 3.5 inches because they just get so cattywampus. So you want to be really careful. Actually, what we're going to do is to line up our center line along that long. It's very close. You know what I'm going to do? We're just going to cut it down to the 3.5 inch because I know I can get that to work. And when you're cutting these quarter square triangles, it's not just a matter of lining up your center seam. What you also have to do is to line up this corner. And so you're going to slide on the seam until your corner here meets that seam. So you've got to keep track of 3 seams. You've got to make sure that your center line is on that long seam. And then you've got to make sure that this 90-degree angle is hitting in that corner. If you're down here, okay, so you can say, well, you know, it's the 3.5 inches, but this is off. So slide it along the seam, get it, make sure everything's lined up properly. Okay, and then make sure that that is also lined up. And then cut. Same thing. Non-dominant hand, 3 fingers down, pinky on the cutting surface, and you can see why I like this rotating mat. Okay, ooh, and then we'll get that little dog ear. I don't know why they call it a dog ear, that sounds awful, but anyway, I didn't name it. So there it is, okay, and then you have a perfect block. Everything is where it should be. Let's see, where's the other one? Here's the other one. Okay. And I know it seems like you're losing a heck of a lot of fabric doing this, but you're just going to have to trust me. I found doing these quarter square triangles that whatever your finished size block is going to be, you're going to want to size up by a full... Oh, and am I off? I might be off just a little bit. Oh my goodness. It's not perfect. I was talking too much, guys. Talking too much. Gets me in trouble. The teacher always told me I talk too much and it gets me in trouble. So I missed my little corner by just a little bit. We're just going to make it work though. So there you go. I've got two beautiful quarter square triangles. And look at that gorgeous design. So that's one. We'll have to go make another set. So I have this other half square triangle. Let me look through. I was going to do those two, but let me see. Do I have this any more of that left? I do not. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull, and I'm going to use this red. So there's half of my project. Let's put those to the side. Here, let's do our second half. And we're going to put the HST face down onto the dark fabric. And same procedure, we're just going to draw out our sewing lines. Again, we're at a 90-degree angle to the seam. Turn it. And I am using my disappearing ink. Alright, I'm going to come back. When I come back, I will have set the seam, and then I will have cut everything apart, and I will have the open blocks, or the prepared blocks, and then we'll trim them down. I'll show you the trimming one more time. Okay, and now we've got two blocks like this and two blocks like this. So then it's just a matter of deciding how you want your project to look. And I mean, there's just so many different ways of designing the look. What did I wind up doing? I wound up putting the small ones to the middle, which you have that look. And what you could do is this. I mean, this is just kind of what you want. So then you wind up with this, which is really kind of cool. It's kind of a mirror image of the center. You could turn it this way. What you want to do is to look at that middle design and decide, do I like how that meets up? And I don't really care for that one in the middle, but this one is pretty cool. I think that works. Sometimes they'll work and sometimes they don't. In this case, I think that the paisley works better than that deer print. Another way of doing it is you could turn it completely. Let's see. You can do this. So you meet the large ones in the middle. Maybe do it this way. And you could have something like that. And that's kind of like a double, almost like a faux flying goose look to that. So this is just kind of rotating to get a shape that you like. There you go. Ooh, I think I like that. honestly, every one of these is going to be a little bit different. That's kind of cool. Ooh, I think I like that. Now, that is closest to this particular pattern, although it's pretty different. Now, something I will say is, to get this look, I wound up using the same fabrics. So I was able to, I had enough left over in the package because I was just starting, that I was able to make identical squares. And in this one I have 2 different squares. But gosh, I really like that one. So I think that's how I'm going to put that one together. So let's do that one. And then what I'm going to do is to do the halves, and then put those 2 halves together for the finished block. And I'll come back and show you that finished block. What can I tell you about this? You're going to want to be really careful about these seams. And you want to make sure that everything is lining up as it should. This one is one where you could repress and send that seam back that way so that you've got nested seams, and it does make it a little easier to get those things together. So I might do that first. But in any event, it's these 2 together and then those. So let me get them together and then I'll come back to you and I'll show you the final block. So here's what this one all finished up looks like, and I think it's kind of cool, and I like how it's got this sort of like over and under, so you kind of look like the dark is overlaying the light, which is really a neat design. These quarter square triangles, I mean, they start to get, well, how do I say this? You can make some pretty complex designs with these. So here are the finished mug rugs, and I first wanted to showcase the ones I made using the half square triangles. I mean, these are beautiful, and I just think it's interesting how it's kind of the same thing in that they're both 4 HST blocks, and yet look how different they look. Isn't that crazy? So you can do a lot with something even as simple as a half square triangle. And I love how it looks. I just did very simple stitch in the ditch. That's sort of my my way of quilting, and so I do everything that way. And I just used the usual thread that I always use, the ermine from Aurifil, and it just works. To me, it works with just about everything except for maybe a really dark fabric. If you want your thread to blend, it's not going to work, of course. But anyway, that's how these came out, and I love them. If you recall, these are all 4-inch trimmed squares. So they were 4 inches going into the project, and I think this is a great size. Let me show you the quarter square triangles, which are kind of interesting. So these are my favorites. These 2 are my favorites because aren't they interesting shapes? You can really get into some pretty complex shapes and different things, and this one is really cool, so you can move things all around. I think that's a cool block, actually. You can do all sorts of fun things with the quarter square triangle. And here it does like a mock flying goose, which I think is neat. And I liked this because to me it looked like mountains, and that was sort of cool. So these were trimmed down to 3.5 inches. And I just did the same thing with stitch in the ditch. And that's how they came out. I really, really like them. Now let me show you. This is like that that flying pinwheel. And something that's interesting when you're working with the quarter square triangles, you really do have to have an issue with the placement on either side. So if you wanted these to be completely perfect, you would have to cut triangles and work with them. And just to keep this particular video a little bit easier and to give you the opportunity to play with shapes, I just stuck to making this easy. I still think they're pretty. And they're just very interesting shapes, I believe. This one I trimmed to 4 inches. This one I trimmed to the 3.5 inch squares. And this one I used fusible, and this one I used that polyfill 80/20, which is super lofty. And I like that puffy, lofty look. I really do. So yeah, I think this is a cool shape. And it's just a little something extra that you can play with and have some fun with. And the thing is, in a mug rug, you know, it's a very quick project. And you can really get in some time with the piecing and playing with the shapes and all of that. So that's what I have for you today. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it gave you some ideas and some inspiration. And all of the instructions will be forthcoming on the blog, so be watching for that. And I guess that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll try making these. And until the next video, I'll see you around YouTube, and happy quilting, my friends.